Modern Warfare Zombies is a lot of things. It's an extraction shooter without any of the PvP elements that make extraction shooters what they are. It's an open world game that prevents the player from exploring that open world at their own pace. It's Call of Duty Zombies without any of the horde mode mechanics that defined this cult classic game mode. On paper, Modern Warfare Zombies shouldn't work, a lot of the game still needs work, and a few parts of the game quite literally don't work. And yet, I have an overwhelming urge to play and grind this game mode, and I am happy to explain why. Welcome to Operation Deadbolt. Modern Warfare Zombies is, and likely always will be, a lightning rod for controversy. That's because Modern Warfare Zombies, or MWZ for short, isn't a wave shooter, but instead a hybrid of the open world mode Outbreak from Black Ops Cold War and Call of Duty's extraction shooter DMZ. The Zombies community is largely hostile towards anything other than horde modes, whether it's the aforementioned Outbreak, the Tortured Path in World War II, and especially Durong Fong in Call of Duty Vanguard. The horde mode is and always should be king, but there is space for other styles if the developers can make the game fun, and Modern Warfare Zombies is by far the best rendition of the objective-based mode we've seen in Zombies. The biggest reason for its success? The map. Urzikstan, as a setting, is adequate. It's as unremarkable as they come, and while it does provide a healthy mixture of tight urban warfare and open fields and rolling hills, the highlight of the map isn't its location. It's this. Those of you who play a variety of open world games won't see anything remarkable here. But for comparison, this is what Outbreak's map looks like.
Ooh, that's kind of small.
Putting these two side by side tells the full story. Where Outbreak had one main objective and 2 or 3 optional side objectives at best, MWZ packs an even larger map with dozens of main objectives in blue and smaller side objectives in white across its entire map. The result is a denser environment that eliminates the long hikes from one objective to another unless the player chooses to take that hike, either out of personal preference or the potential rewards each objective can provide. And if you don't want to do any objectives, for some reason, you can work on the story missions by completing predetermined challenges for additional rewards. And on top of all of that, if you fail any of the objectives, you can keep playing, whereas in Outbreak, failing the objective was an instant game over. As a solo player, I cannot overstate how much I appreciate that change. Having the option to tackle any objective in any order, or to simply ignore objectives entirely, is one of 2 key improvements to player choice in MWZ. The other are the tiered zones. While it may not look like it at first, these tiered zones are the saving grace for us solo players. Where Outbreak would force the player to either increase the difficulty or exfil after completing an objective, MWZ provides the player a choice of 3 difficulty settings that they can switch between at any given time by moving to a new area of the map. Each of these zones represents a higher difficulty level, the outer ring being the easiest, the inner ring being the hardest, and the middle is somewhere in between. And the harder the difficulty, the better the potential rewards. You're incentivized to build up your strength across one or potentially multiple games to take on objectives in the hardest zones, but you don't have to if you don't want to. If you want to, you can play your entire MWZ game in the lowest threat zone, which is what I gravitate towards because I play solo. But even if you have a full squad, you can still stay in the outermost ring and have fun doing nothing but shooting zombies, something the game mode could often lose focus of during its heyday. And if you want a game that provides a challenge, the higher threat zones will give you exactly what you're looking for. Last but not least, we have the timer. A lot of players hate this hard time limit on each game because they can't complete everything they set out to do in one game, but I like it because you can't do everything in one game. Look at me being a contrarian. Aren't I special? But really, the hard time limit is a huge part of this game mode's core. I find myself looking at that timer constantly and planning my actions accordingly, because if I miss that last exfil, I lose everything I worked so hard to find. And because you likely won't have time to finish everything you set out to do in a single game, there's always something to look forward to in the next match. That all being said, the timer itself is still too short. An hour sounds like a lot of time, but it runs out really quickly, especially since the game only plays normally for the first 45 minutes before switching to another 15-minute timer where the game heavily emphasizes your exfil. And by heavily emphasizes, I mean you're kinda forced to do it. And characters will start telling you to exfil when that first timer hits 10 minutes, so it feels even shorter. It's not hard to feel rushed while playing, which, while something I've enjoyed, clearly hasn't gone over well with some parts of the community. Thankfully, this is easily fixable without removing the timer entirely like many are suggesting. If I could make changes, I would suggest that the first timer be increased by 15 minutes. This not only gives the player a lot more time to complete objectives before being forced to exfil, but it also makes the game 75 minutes long, or 1 hour, 15 minutes. 115. Is it cheesy? Yeah, absolutely. Am I a sucker for it anyway? You betcha. While discussing what Modern Warfare Zombies got right, we touched on a lot of what the mode got wrong. The game not being round-based is already a deal breaker for many, and those who tried the game despite that are often complaining about that hard time limit. But by far the most frustrating design decision is the game's overall balancing. MWZ is balanced for co-op, and it shows. Unless you spawn with a ton of items from prior games to help out, you'll get destroyed in the tier 3 zones and will probably struggle a fair bit in tier 2, because you don't have time to fully set up. Even if you're able to play a few games to get valuable items for future runs, the stash only holds an additional 10 items, which isn't nearly enough to make up for the lack of fire support you experience as a solo player. And when the punishment for failure is that you lose everything, it often isn't worth risking venturing into the game's higher tiered zones. But even in the lowest difficulty, you can't escape this game's biggest balance problem: the mercenaries. I have no idea what's up with these guys. Their challenge is almost entirely random from person to person. Sometimes I can mow down 50 of them without question, and other times I get one tapped and wonder what the hell happened. And don't even get me started on those goddamn riot shielders. It's almost like there's a mixture of recruit and veteran level bots, and it's impossible to tell which is which until you're already dead. And while we're on the subject of enemy behavior, I've gotta ask, what is up with the zombie pathing in this game? I've played every installment of every game in this franchise for the last 12 years, and I've encountered more bugs with the zombies themselves in the first 12 hours of MWZ than in my entire time with all 10 prior Zombies games combined. Zombies will oftentimes ignore the player entirely, walk away from the player, glitch underneath geometry, walk through the air itself, and after all of that, when you try and exfil, they slow down their animations to 10 frames a second. Also, mimics can be defeated by knee-high walls. Of all the things I expected to be wrong with this game, I didn't think it would be something that's been the same since World at War. I've seen the zombies break before, but never on this scale and never so frequently. And I have a theory as to why. I can handle zombie AI and animations breaking. I can handle being shot at while playing zombies. I can even handle being limited to the low-tiered zones as a solo player. These are all things that the developers are entirely capable of fixing. What the developers can't fix are the servers. As of writing, I have about 15 hours of playtime in Modern Warfare Zombies across several days throughout all hours of the day. And in every single game I've played, I've had consistent frame drops, packet loss, high latency, and overall shitty performance at every single turn. Thankfully, these frame drops haven't led to a death yet, though there have been some close calls. But if you think gameplay that looks like this is acceptable, then you're an Activision Blizzard executive. And if you think gameplay that looks like this is acceptable, then you might have worked on Cyberpunk. I said this was an issue that the developers weren't capable of fixing, and I meant that, but not for the reasons you probably think. I don't have a complete understanding of how Activision runs Call of Duty, but to my understanding, the quality of a game's servers are in the hands of the publisher, not the developer. And given Activision's history of awful decision making, I don't exactly have faith in them. It's also entirely possible that the launch of the game is putting a ton of strain on the servers that would otherwise work fine if not for the high demand, but I didn't buy the game now for it to be good later. especially since that later is entirely speculative on my part. These connection issues are also the same connection problems I had with Sledgehammer's last game, Call of Duty Vanguard, and they're all still problems I experience whenever I go back to play that game's Zombies mode, both on console and PC. Modern Warfare is a lot better than Vanguard, but it will be every bit as unplayable if these connection issues aren't solved as soon as possible. This is Treyarch and Sledgehammer's #1 priority. If it's not fixed, then nothing else matters. I'm enjoying Modern Warfare Zombies a lot more than I thought I would. I wouldn't call it a great mode, but considering I thought this would be on the same level as Vanguard Zombies, this was actually a pleasant little surprise. Is it a surprise worth buying? Probably not for $70, but if some time passes, the servers are improved, and the bugs and balance issues are resolved, I could recommend picking this up when it goes on sale. That is with the caveat that it's not a horde mode. This is one where you really do have to play it for yourself to know if you like it or not. But those are just my thoughts. Of course, let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching, like the video if you made it this far, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.